Jeff, thank you very much indeed for making the time to talk. It's what I guess is a really auspicious time in uh, in your life at the moment. So, can you just sort of walk me back over the last 50 or so years? Now, this is your return to the music scene after
Uh,
a 50-year absence. Well, that's the way it looks anyway. Okay, you can fill me in on the details.
right.
But just for
So
the
you want to know what I've been up to for 50 years?
Yeah. Can I just fill in briefly on your history, right? Music history. Obviously, you were a very well-trained and a musician at a very early age, and obviously a lot of natural talent. You did your first recording when you were 14 and a half, is that correct? And
That
then
is
you,
true.
you were in various bands, including I think Merle and the Exiles. Oh, sorry, was it Merle and the Exiles? And
Uh-huh.
Blues in a Bottle, which is the sort of kind of prototype magic band. And then
Uh-huh.
you worked with Captain Beefheart and his magic band for three very milestone albums. Then you left Beefheart. Then you were a co-founder of Moo, right? And
Right.
and then they split up in what, 1975, was it?
Yeah. I'd say
Okay.
about 75.
So that's the history. And then since then, please, Jeff, tell me what.
Okay. So um, musically, I've just continued to write, of course.
Yeah.
And we've even played now. My late wife was a great musician and a wonderful writer. And so we wrote a lot together and we played a number of gigs together as well in Hawaii. Um, because he was a writer as well. It was a lot of fun, and we did some really nice gigs, a few concerts, a few little clubs, um, weddings and funerals, only for personal friends,
Yeah.
not for
Yeah.
yeah. So kept the music coming. I didn't get into recording the music until about 2000. I think it was 2005 because I was always a little queasy about digital recording back in those days. To me, it was, you know, it was like a hospital sort of. It's very clean and no character, no
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah.
So at one point, there was a console that came out that was warm, and so I started recording then, and the album that is out, coming out on August 12th, by the way, has the initial basic tracks. Many of them were recorded back um, between 2005 and of course, right up until the release of the, not the release, but the recording of the album here and finishing it. Andre um, came in and it made a big difference because he's an engineer. I'm not
Right.
an engineer, but I fell in love with engineering.
Yeah. Yeah.
At least I could keep the needles from pegging.
Yeah.
So when Andre came on the scene, he had what he needed to
Yeah.
work with.
Yeah.
It wasn't distortion and all this other stuff. But anyway, so getting back to it, I digress there. We played some gigs um, over the years, and that's about it. It was other than that, it's just recording.
And of course, during that time, you raised a family.
Oh yes, I have three children, adult children, and so I raised them. I did the recording. It was very interesting. A lot of the basic tracks on this first album were done in very little increments. If I had 15 minutes, I'd go down in the studio. I'd lay down a part. Maybe a couple hours later, I could come for a half hour. After everybody went to sleep at night, I might be able to do 2 hours. So it was literally put together in that fashion.
But okay.
And of course, as you know, I played all the different parts on it.
Yeah. Let's get back to we'll get to the album in some detail very
Yeah, yeah.
shortly. Just recapping on the last 50 years or so, though, you did an
Mm-hmm.
excellent interview on YouTube with Samuel Andreeff, the Canadian musicologist. In that interview,
Mm-hmm.
you said that the intervening period has been, at least in part for you, a period of healing and sort of getting a bit of balance and perspective right in your life. I just wanted to ask you to enlarge on that. What were you healing from? I mean, it's well documented that you and
Yeah.
the rest of the Magic Band, for example, when you were recording Track Mask Replica, were subjected to fairly manipulative and abusive behavior by Don Van Vliet, Captain Beefheart. And
Hmm.
does it go back to that period which might have been a bit of a challenging time for you, or were there other factors involved that as you say, you were healing from?
That's a great question. You know, we don't come into this planet. Well, I won't even say that. I'll just say by the time we're teenagers, we have had a lot of reprogramming done on us. Unconscious reprogramming is a nice way to put it, or the dark side, where
Yeah.
we don't even question until a certain time in our life. Maybe something will happen that's really heavy, and we begin to question our lives. Or some people say they hit a bottom before they started coming up. So I had everything everybody else did to deal with as a kid, the emotional stuff. But it was the Magic Band time. You see, when I first joined the Beefheart, um, Alex St. Clair, Alex Snoffer, and we had the original band there with Jerry Handley and John French and myself and Don. And I got drafted by the U.S. Army a few months into the band. And so obviously, and I didn't want to go to another country and take out my brothers and sisters of any age,
This
whether
was
they're children or elder.
during Vietnam, right? Just for historical context, yeah.
Yes, it was the Vietnam War. And I wasn't about to do that. And they wanted me in the band, and I wanted to be in the band. And so we did everything we could to get me out. And we did get me out. That's a story in itself. But if we want to stick to music, we could talk about that later. But the point is, I didn't want to go to war. I didn't want to go to Vietnam. I thought I could escape war in Vietnam. But if that's what's laid out in front of you, you're going to have it anyway. So I had my Vietnam in the Magic Band, Captain Beefheart in the Magic Band. And so it was probably as intense and emotionally, wrenching as going to war.
Wow.
So I didn't
Wow.
get out of it, but I at least made my own choice as an individual. No, you're not going to tell me what I'm going to do in my life and other people's lives, and that's up to me. So though I had my own Vietnam, I really enjoyed. I can look back at it and really enjoy it because, as you had brought up the question, yes, I did a lot of healing work.
Right.
I mean, right from the get-go.
Yeah.
Every kind of cutting edge modality I could find. Rapid eye technology is outrageous. There are so many other different things that we did. And so I cleared it as much as I could.
Yeah.
Because to me, it was important to clear the emotional garbage because I don't care how spiritual one may be. If one's emotional body is polluted, all you're going to do is shine that beautiful light through a maze of yucky colors. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What's going to come out? So that was responsibility to me.
Okay. So what was there a point then that you felt that you had healed or you'd healed significantly to move forward and do new things?
Well, I guess by the time I got my recording equipment, I really felt like a lot of work had already been done.
Okay.
And so, because I wasn't about to help pollute the environment more than it's already polluted sonically. And I know there's a lot of good stuff out there, and there's a lot of outrageously fantastic musicians. I wouldn't even consider trying to compete. No way. No way.
So, in the lead up to this album, was it something that you've been sort of working towards either directly or at the back of your mind for some time? Was it something that just came to you in a flash? You say, "Well, I got to do this now." How did the steps towards making this album evolve?
Well, from the time Moo broke up, I always was wanting. That's where my heart was. My heart was there before I met my wonderful wife and had my children. You know, that was primary in my life.
Yeah.
So I was probably, and I'll bring Randy Weimer into this, the drummer, with Moo and with us here. I met him. I'll tell you a little story. I met him in high school. We went to Antelope Valley High School, where Don Valit, Frank Zappa, and all of the Blues in the Bottle, and all of us went. With the exception of Bill Harkleroad, he went to Palmdale School in Palmdale, but it's all the same area. Mm. But anyway, so what was my point there? Ask me that question again.
So leading up to the album, was it a sort of a moment of inspiration? Was it a gradual trajectory? Right?
Very good. Yeah, no, from the time I was 20 years old, and not 20, go way back, with Randy, when I was in high school, I was a sophomore, he was a freshman. We had study hall together because we just come into school. We didn't have all our classes. We sat down and met the first time, and he said, I would love to learn to play drums. Mm-hmm. And I looked at him and I said, if you will learn to play drums, we will play together. So that's how it happened. Some people call it magic, some, whatever word you want to call it. But I've always wanted to do the right thing. I've always had a spiritual bent, I would guess you'd say. Right. And that was more powerful than anything else in my life.
That's great. Well, we'll come back to that in a second. Just about the album, the Fantasy of Reality. What were you aiming to achieve with the album? I mean, were your objectives really, was your objective to create yourself in some to fulfill yourself in some specific creative way, or was the motivation deeper and more personal than that?
It was deeper and more personal. I have wanted all my life to do something that counted for others, not so I would have a notch on my gun, but do something for others that was positive. And that's been my whole motivation. Now, obviously, that's a thought of a young kid, but as you go older, it takes on a deeper meaning, a wider meaning. And we need love in this world. We need to love one another. Is what we need. We know that. Yeah. And we need to do it because every human being on this planet is a genius. Many just don't know it yet, and they don't know what their genius is. And so my heart is to hopefully, because I'm trying to live that life, inspire others to be motivated and then to begin their path and journey, if they haven't already, to know who they really are. Because everybody has a great magic within them. And if they get their fire lit, this world will clear up. We can clear this thing up.
And is that like the philosophical rationale behind the album? Is that sort of the communication you're trying to make via the album as well?
Just back to love and empowerment. And also, let's begin, if we haven't, and many of us have, and many are light years beyond us, etc. But let's begin to work together to bring what we all know we need to feed us. Yeah, that's what it's all about.
I think the title, "The Fantasy of Reality," is a very strong, it's a very bold statement. Do you think that in some ways that what most people regard as reality is a fantasy, or do you think that that spiritual reality is more real than the day-to-day reality we all live? I mean, how do you sort of see that?
Yeah, I mean, you just said it. It's really
okay. One
more time, ask me that question.
So, the fantasy of reality is a very strong statement. I'm just trying to sort of get a sense of how you view these two different concepts: spirituality, fantasy, and reality. Do you feel that the spiritual life is in some way more real than the kind of day-to-day lives that we go through?
Spiritual life is the only reality. even though we're experiencing other physical things, the whole core of it is spiritual. We would not be here in physical bodies if we were not spiritual beings.
Right.
So that's how I look at it. And so on this album, I'm not a judge. I leave that to who I call the one who is love.
Yeah. Yeah.
I leave that to him. So I don't judge, but what I want to do is put out, there are two sides. There's fantasy and reality, and let every individual, inspired hopefully by some of the music, have the motivation to move a little more forward in their own understanding. Well, wow, I thought this was what's real. It's really not. This is. And you take any two people on the planet, on opposite sides of the planet, and they'll probably have a totally different idea of what reality in fantasy is. And I leave that to them. People has asked me, well, what do these words mean? And I say, I've done all I can to make clarity in the words as they are. And Randy also, I got to bring Randy Weimer because he was the co-writer or author of some of this music.
Okay.
So it's up to the person, the other person. I don't believe I'm not a judge.
Okay. The album itself, let's talk about it in more sort of a narrow musical perspective.
Sure.
How would you talk about the album in terms of its themes and musical style?
I don't quite understand that question.
So,
ask me another way.
Yeah, sure. So put it another way, what in your view does the album say about how you developed musically over the last 50 years? Let's put it that way.
What does it say about how I've developed over the last 50 years?
Musically, yeah.
Musically. Well, I don't even know if I can answer that honestly. Honestly, I don't know if I can answer that. I will say this. 40, 50 years ago, I believed in art for art's sake. And today, I'm not interested in that at all. I'm interested in communication and connection with another being, another human being. So all the music has evolved. The lyrics have evolved, and the music has evolved in that direction. I used to be, as you know, you take a mini beginning guitarist like me when I started young. I want to get all these licks, and I want to be hot, and I want to be so fast that people just can't believe it, me. For many years, and you'll hear it on the Fantasy of Reality, one of the tunes, it's an instrumental classical piece called Ivy.
Okay.
Ivy. I'm looking for the least notes, the most simple construct possible. That's what I'm looking for. And you've heard it many times. It's not what you play, it's what you don't play.
Yeah.
It's the silence between, because that's why I love music even more than film in some ways. Because in music, it allows the listener to co-create. And if there's more space in the song, there's more time and space for people to co-create. Because we are, as I've said before, we are all in this together. And it's a unique time in history that's never been. And that's how I see it.
So the songs on the album, are these recent compositions, or have they been with you for a long time?
Many of them have been around. I shouldn't say many. Some of them date back to Moo, but Moo didn't play them. So 70, some of these, one of them goes back to late 1970. And of course, since then, we've added so much. There are new movements, but the real meat of the song, the essence of it was already there. And there are some that were done just in the last year and a half.
Yeah.
So it's just, I call it a smorgasbord.
Yeah.
A sampler, maybe.
So what, for you, are the standout tracks on the album, and why? Would you single out two or three? Or?
Okay. For the Captain Beefheart and Magic Band fans, and for those who like instrumentals as well, there, On the Thread.
Okay.
Is a good one. That's one of my favorites because I do like avant-garde type music, and the Beefheart fans may not see it exactly as I do. They may say, "Well, that doesn't seem too Beefheart to me," but that's my concept. Had I been in more active back then in the Trout Mask days, the songs would have probably been a little more conservative, like On the Thread. So that's one. Again, Ivy, because that's a classical solo piece, very simple. Part of that song is literally as it was being written, being played. And then parts of it I did have to spend some time and craft. There's a few more that are really you might want to look at. I don't have the list in front of me, but the space between.
Yeah.
The space between us. Now, there's no hot licks or anything like that in that song, but I am playing horn, and I have a beautiful little straight soprano sax like the one that John French and I bought for Don.
Yeah, right.
That's where he got his horn. And but mine is a C soprano. There were only a few of them made in comparison to a B flat, which most of them are. And it's got a great sound. So that song, I think, highlights the horns and the message. When the space between us all becomes a bridge, I long for then, and I always will. That's one. Gosh, there's a lot of them. The Liberation Song is a good one. The Liberation Song. It's got a little. It's not bottleneck, but it does have a interesting little guitar solo in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned there's something there for the Beefheart fans. Obviously, the album hasn't come out yet. It's another week or two, and I don't have a review copy. So, but the couple of tracks I have dropped, obviously, Does It Work For You and Elvira's, and Elvira's strikes me that the vocal, particularly on that, is very reminiscent of Beefheart. Was that a conscious imitation?
No. But that was my voice. That was my every song I write tells me what it needs in voice or whatever. And I don't, I'm 74, but I think I sound more like 97. But I like humor. Oh, please. To answer your question, one more song. Heavy.
Yeah.
Heavy is a song, another blues bottleneck. And that one, that would be a good one. And I use a very old man's voice.
Yeah.
I won't tell you who he was, but I used his voice.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So, okay. So, well, look, I'm just going to skip ahead. This is great, Jeff. Thanks again. I won't keep too much longer, but you mentioned that spirituality has obviously been important in shaping your life. And I believe that at one stage in your career, after leaving the music scene, you studied for the Christian ministry. Is that correct?
Actually, that is not correct. And that has to be corrected in the whole history. I became converted.
All right, okay.
And I became a Christian back in, when was that? 74, I guess.
Yeah.
And Randy went off to the Christian ministry, drummer.
Yeah.
My wife and I began to study, and at one point we did medical missionary work, and we traveled the islands. We traveled Alberta, Canada, California, and so we had several years of that, and that really strengthened my faith, because when you depend on the one who is love and you trust, what you need is really there. It sounds like we've heard it so many times, but when you depend on that for your life, it strengthens your faith and your belief. So that was major for me.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I have gone through many different, I mean, as many my age, I've studied every philosophy that I could get my hands on.
Yeah.
I've been hungry since I was I think 17 is when I really
Mm.
started to get hungry for truth.
Mm.
And I believe in, I don't believe in building a temple and worshiping here forever and going, this is it, this is the
Yeah.
light, because it's not.
Mm.
It's not. I only see a little bit of it, but I'm hungry for more. And so wherever he leads me is where I'll go.
So, just obviously, this is great background to the album,
Uh-huh.
and it's great to sort of get some perspective on your life and your journey here. I
Mm-hmm.
can't resist slipping in a question about Trout Mask Replica. I don't know if you ever get tired about talking about it.
Not at all. Not at all.
So, simple question: how would you describe it?
Trout mask.
Yeah,
I would describe it. Um, I'll use a similar. I shouldn't say similar artist, but there are similarities. John Coltrane was a
yeah.
great inspiration to me. And what he did for jazz is he just broke down all the forms of the day, just went through it, just tore it all up. So something new, hopefully, could sprout and come full circle. That's what I see the Magic Band in Trout Mask did. Break the forms of rock down, forms of not even just rock, blues, jazz, so something new could come.
Mm.
I don't think it is the end in itself. It is to be admired for what it is and where it is in point of time. But that's what it's a tearing down to me, so something new can come.
So just going back to your comment you made earlier, that in the beginning you were sort of motivated by the idea of art for art's sake, and these
Mm-hmm.
days you're more about communication.
Correct.
Do you think that Trout Mask Replica is really in the art for art's sake camp, and do you feel that it communicates anything, or how would you
Oh,
put
I think it's very important.
Mm.
It's not art for art's sake. Even if Don's intention was art for art's sake, and I can't judge that.
Mm.
No, it's much more than that, because it's like with the body when we're doing medical missionary work and that. You always refer to the fact that you can take the best foods into your body that there are, and they may do nothing for you because the body is already so toxic. It cannot assimilate. And likewise in music and in life, if my emotions are so full of garbage and my mind is so programmed to see only one way, the creator can stand in front of you and you don't even see him. Likewise in the music. So I think Trout Mask was very important, because until it's broken down and malleable again, nothing new can come.
That's
Without that, it would probably have been more of what was going on there in those days. I think it made a major change in music, yes.
I think that's the best articulation of Trout Mask Replica I've heard, and I think possibly that
Mm-hmm.
explains its longevity, right? That's
And
my
the
view.
people,
Yeah,
very good, I agree. And the
yeah,
people who love it.
yeah.
I mean, let's face it, birds of a feather flock together.
Jeff, look, thank you so much for your time. I am going
You're
to
quite welcome.
go away with this and write it up,
Uh-huh.
and what I'm looking forward to next is hearing the album, and hopefully I can come back to you with some thoughts on that, and maybe we can talk about the album in more detail at a certain time.
I would love to do that and spend as much time as you want to spend. I love it.
Thank you
That's what
very,
it's about.
thank you very much
Now,
indeed,
can I
Jeff.
contact you? Can I
Uh,
contact you on your email?
yes, of course. I'll send you all my details.
Excellent. And I'm sorry I interrupted you. Go ahead with what you were saying.
No, that was just saying. I think my personal view. I mean, Trout Mask Replica was 14 when I came out. I bought it then. Um,
Yeah.
it took me a while to get into it, but wow! Once you sort of see the ideas behind it and break it down in that sense, it just becomes something else. And I think of it
Yeah.
as a modernist classic. So there you go.
Yes, sir.
That's
And I agree with you.
that's my fanboy statement. It's really embarrassing saying that to you, but there you
No.
go.
Hey,
Jeff, thanks
it's
a
been a
lot.
blessing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Roger.
Talking as
Aloha.
it. Aloha. Cheers.